As the coronavirus outbreak worsens in Italy, Japan, and the United States, China, where the pandemic began, says its new infection rates have stabilized. Can the rest of the world trust the information coming from this Chinese government? Let's begin with Gordon Chang, Asia expert, contributor for the Daily Beast. He's in New York. What do you make of China's claims? You think they've stabilized it, Gordon?
Yeah, we don't really know, Larry, because there's now extraordinary information control. And the infection statistics, death statistics that are coming out of Beijing actually support Chinese ruler Xi Jinping's policy of getting Chinese workers back to their job sites. So it's sort of suspicious. Now, I think that maybe in Wuhan, where this started, maybe they've stabilized, but we also know that there are clusters in Beijing and some other cities. And so you could very well have in these other locations a new virus outbreak. But, as I said, because of what Beijing's been doing, especially putting journalists in jail and all the rest of it, we absolutely do not have very much of an idea.
So can we assess how Jinping is handling this?
Well, we know that for 6 weeks, from December 8th, when the first coronavirus patient was diagnosed, to January 20th, when he made his first public acknowledgement, we know that the Communist Party hid information about the virus. It allowed it to spread around China and indeed to escape China and around the world. So that is damning of his policies. The real problem is he's now gone back to this secrecy. And because of that, it's very difficult for us to assess what's going on. But I don't trust those numbers, and we really won't know for quite some time.
Now, do you think the impact of the coronavirus will tip the global economy into a recession?
I think it's already happening, Larry. We're seeing, for instance, China in February was in a contraction. I don't know if they'll be able to recover much in March, but we have seen in places, advanced societies like South Korea, Italy, they're just shutting down large portions of the country. That's going to occur in the U.S. as well. I think that you're going to see a recession coming. Now, it needn't be a deep one, but nonetheless, economic activity is coming to a standstill in many locations.
So many of the goods we buy say made in China. Is that going to change?
I think it will change for certain goods. So, for instance, pharmaceuticals. We have this extraordinary dependence on China. They supply 80%, maybe 97% of antibiotics and the compounds used to make antibiotics. That can't continue. And this is being viewed as a national security issue. Also, protective medical gear, gowns, masks, gloves. I think that probably we will start making some of that stuff ourselves because we realize that we're critically dependent on it, and China has threatened to cut that off. If you're looking for common goods, the stuff that you'd find at a big box retailer, that stuff might not change, but I think that ultimately we are going to look at items, run down the list, and see what's important for our national security and for the health of Americans, and that type of stuff needs to be made here.
What country is better positioned to deal with the fallout from the coronavirus, the United States or China?
Well, right now it's the United States. And the reason is that President Trump at the end of January imposed the quarantines and travel restrictions, and that has bought us some time. China didn't do that, and so their society right now is crippled. So we're in a much better position. But we could end up in an emergency situation if we don't take restrictive measures right now. And virologists are saying that there still is a window, but it's a narrow window, and we've got to do something more restrictive, which we don't want to do, of course, but we're going to have to do that if we want to avoid millions of infections. And people are talking about millions and millions of infections here.
Do you think the China leaders have a better understanding of the virus than President Trump?
Probably they both don't have as good an understanding as they need. Though the difference is that President Trump is in a democratic society, there are a lot of people who are now driving America's response to this because President Trump, as an executive, has just charged the vice president. You see the leaders of the National Institutes of Health, the CDC, they're the ones who are working on this. I think Xi Jinping probably is on top of a chain, and that chain has really developed over decades to prevent information going to the top in many cases. So I'm not so sure that Xi Jinping knows exactly what's going on, but he should. So there's different problems in both societies.
The World Health Organization has declared this a pandemic. How do you define pandemic?
Pandemic is an epidemic in separate continents. That's the garden variety definition. And we've had a pandemic for weeks and weeks now, but the World Health Organization was slow to actually declare it, which they did on Wednesday. They were also slow to declare an emergency situation about a month ago. So really, the World Health Organization has been really inexcusably slow in doing this. And many people believe, as I do, that they've been slow because China's been pressuring them to make sure that the world remains open to Chinese travelers and to travel to China, as well as not to give China a bad reputation. So the World Health Organization has a lot to answer for. And when this virus subsides, I think that there's probably going to be a lot of pressure to change the WHO and to sort of try to break that link it has with Beijing.
Gordon Chang, as always, thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Larry.